So here we've got a really interesting shoe. It's the Tolos Archetype 2, and it's something that I keep saying is like a Viva Barefoot Primus light killer. And why is that? Well, because it's got that stylish factor. It's super duper flexible. You could take it to the gym. You could take it running as well. There are a lot of interesting aspects to it. So I'm Nick from Barefoot Run Review, and I like to talk about shoes that fit your feet. So shoes that may be minimal, that may be barefoot, but also throwing in some cushioned options if you want to race super fast or get onto the trails and protect your feet at the same time. Today, we're talking about the Tolos Archetype 2, and it's going to be a really interesting option for me. It's one that I say if you want to go traveling and you only want to take one shoe with you to run, to go to the gym, to go out casually, well, this is a great option for you. So first, let's talk about the fit of the shoe. So in terms of barefoot shoes, this isn't going to be the widest on the market. It's not going to be the deepest on the market. It's probably right down the center. For example, this midfoot is not super wide, but it's going to fit most feet. I have a fairly average wide foot, and I actually fit into it fairly well. And looking into the toe box, it's fairly similar too. So this big toe area, it's not super squared off. You may have to go a little bit larger if you do have a really large big toe splay. But at the same time, again, for me, true to size is absolutely fine. And again, it's exactly the same on this little toe side. It tapers a little bit aggressively around here. For most people out there, I'd probably say like 80% of you, that's absolutely fine. But for those other 20%, just notice that you may have to go a little bit larger to find a better fit. It's an average depth shoe. So you have options in this, which is kind of interesting. The shoe comes without an insole in at all. It's actually a sewn-in footbed, which is absolutely fine to run and walk and do anything in if you want. But if you want to actually fill out a bit of space, if you're somebody with a really shallow foot, then they provide an insole that you can put in there just to fill out that space that little bit. I tried that, and I quite liked the fit over the midfoot at that point. But the thing is, it pushed up my toes a little bit too close to the top of the toe box here. So in the end, I had to take the insole out. But really, that's a personal choice, and interesting, well, they do have those options out there. So looking at the heel, I actually got a really good fit in this when I had the insole in, interestingly. So it actually filled out a little bit of space underneath and allowed my heel to sit firmly into the back of this shoe. The good thing is the actual heel material is completely flexible. There's no stiffness in here. And this lacing allows it to pull round quite nicely into a great fit. When I took the insoles out, which I had to pretty much run in it with the insoles out, it actually got a tiny bit sloppy through this heel, but in the end, it wasn't a huge issue. If you're just wearing it casually or even in the gym, you're not going to find any difference at all. I'd say if you're running, well, maybe you will have to try it a little bit and just get used to that feeling. So the design is actually like a booty design. It's got no tongue, completely sewn in. So for most people, they're going to be absolutely fine. If you've got a really, really deep foot or maybe a wider ankle, you may find it a little bit hard to get into the shoe. Apparently, some people did have that problem on the Archetype 1, but it was actually adjusted slightly to have more flexibility in the booty design to allow for a wider or a deeper fit at least anyway. So you probably won't have an issue getting into the shoe at least. With this design, it actually sits quite tight around this midfoot, which is great for lateral secureness. So if you're using this for any type of court sports or anything like that, you'll actually get a really nice secure fit because of that. At the same time, if you've got a really deep foot, there may be a bit too much pressure over the top of your foot. So in general, it's kind of a mixed bag, really. I would say it's for somebody that has an average to shallow depth foot, and then also not a super wide foot and not a super wide splay either. It's probably right bang down the middle. It's going to be for that average kind of size foot. And for most people, that's going to be absolutely fine. So let's jump into the feel of this shoe. So I think the standout feature of this shoe is the flexibility. It rolls, it twists, it goes into absolutely any shape that you want it to. And it basically mimics barefoot as close as you're going to get with that little bit of protection. So that's great because if you want to use this for running, you know that you're going to actually utilize your foot structure as close to natural as possible. Underfoot, you've got about a 5mm stack height. So that's an outsole of 3.5mm and then a sewn in footbed, which is about 2mm. And if you put that insole in there, you get another 3.5mm on top of that as well. But otherwise, so 5.5mm, it's pretty low in stack height. That means you really get to feel the ground underfoot. And if you're doing any type of barefoot training, that's actually really, really good. The other side of it is basically, well, it's a great gym shoe as well. So many people actually use this in the gym. And one reason is because this upper material is nice and secure. It's somewhat flexible, but it makes sure that you don't slip over the side of the shoe at all. You get some nice secure fit in there. I would also say that means it does pretty well for court sports or any other sports that you can think where you've got a lot of lateral motion involved. And then because the shoe looks fairly casual, I kind of find that you can use it out on the streets if you just go into town. So that's really where it comes into its own, because you can use it in many, many, many different situations, and you're just using that one shoe, which is pretty cool. So I did find when I was running that I actually had to loosen off these laces over the top, because over time, as my feet started to expand and swell, I started getting a little bit of pressure over the top of the midfoot here. And I just tried to tie them a little too tight to cinch in my heel. And I found midway through the run, I just wanted to loosen these off a bit. In the end, I worked out how to lace them at the start of the run, so that wasn't an issue anymore. But it's just something worth noting that you will feel a lack of forgiveness over the top of the midfoot, especially around here. In terms of the durability of the Archetype 2. So after talking with the founder for a few hours, it was really interesting to hear the design aspects that's gone into this shoe, especially around the iterations that he's made over the first version, including the fit and the aspects of the overlays coming around the side of the toe box here. There's many, many things that have actually changed in this shoe, and hopefully for the better. So I've run about 100 kilometers in these up to now, and I'm seeing a little bit of wear through the outsole here, especially through the middle, which is my normal run pattern. I would say that it's not going to be too much of an issue. This is a typical road shoe. You're not looking for lots of grip on the trails or anything. But at the same time, I think this is probably the weakest aspect of the shoe, especially if you're going to be running in it. And another thing to think about, this upper material, it's not that breathable. If you're wanting to run in this in summer, it's going to be a little bit hot in there. But if you're going to be running in the winter, or maybe even just a moderate climate in the UK, over here in New Zealand, it'll be absolutely fine for that. But at the same time, that means that it's a really durable upper too. Those flex points where you'll actually have a high wear rate, it's pretty resilient. So I don't actually worry about that breaking at all. Other areas of the shoe, maybe the inner liner in there, if you do have any play in that heel, and maybe someone with more of a shallow heel or a thinner heel, they may have a little bit of play in there. So that rubbing can maybe cause an issue on the inner liner, at least anyway. But otherwise, you see a fairly decent design in general, and a durable design at that. So in conclusion, so like I said at the start of this review, if I was going traveling and I could only take one shoe with me, I think the Tolos Archetype 2 would actually be a really, really good option. And that's because it has a lot of flexibility in terms of the areas that you can use it in. So for example, if you're going running, yeah, you could definitely go running in it. If you're just wearing it casually around town or even going to the gym, it actually works really, really well. In terms of a price point, it's coming in at 120, which is a pretty decent price if you compare to the rest of the market. And especially if you're comparing with the Vivo Barefoot, which this likely goes up against, the Primus Lite that is, it's actually much cheaper than that. So bang for your buck, it's pretty good. Durability, I think it's probably at the right price point for where it's at. And then also the flexibility, well, I think it's punching above its weight there, which is pretty cool. I wouldn't say that this is a perfect running shoe by any means, but it's definitely got the flexibility in it to be a decent running shoe. For me, this actually replaced the Vivo Barefoot Primus Lite for now. I actually use this as a casual option. And if I actually want to go for a run every now and then, this is the one I use. So I think that shows that it's a pretty good contender out there. So I would say this shoe isn't for somebody with a really deep foot or a really wide toe splay. If that's you, then you have to look elsewhere for that. But for the rest of us, maybe about 80% of us out there, the fit and the feel of this shoe will be absolutely great for you.